What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and making this video today. Got a couple things to talk about. First and foremost, mandatory minicamp is this week. I think it's just a few days, and then after that it begins the long period of time where there's no football until training camp. Couple months, like 2 months I think it is roughly. So but we'll find things to talk about. Obviously, there's gonna be plenty of speculation and stuff going on in the media and so on and so forth. So we'll be seeing what people are talking about, and we'll find out what kind of hype is out there, and we'll address it as the off season goes. That's how it is, because when there's no current live action kind of stuff, when there's no games, we gotta find things to talk about. But there will be plenty to talk about, I'm sure. So but anyway, getting into it, the first thing I wanted to talk about just really quick was a little bit about Michael Dieter. He's our the guard we took in the 3rd round. So he's the last draft pick, or he's the only draft pick that hasn't been signed yet, which I think is interesting. And it's interesting to me because the only time I've ever seen draft picks not get signed, and the one that comes to mind most recently was Joey Bosa. He was a 1st round pick, of course, and I guess it would make more sense in that situation. But the only time I've seen it is when players hold out for like more money or like guaranteed contracts or something like that. And look, I mean, generally, rookie contract, and I'm not saying that's what he's doing. I don't know, but that's from, what I've seen. That's the only reason why rookie contracts don't get signed within, generally within like the first week-ish. Sometimes there's some logistical issues that, delay them, but most teams get their draft picks signed, within the first few days, or whatever. And so, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. It's just curious to me, right? But the other part of it that makes it even more curious, though, is the fact that, there was, from the talk that I've, heard, from reports I've seen, there was, I can't remember who talked about it, but there was like an interview or whatever that I think was in one of my videos, where like a player or coach or something was saying that, he's going to need some time. He's going to need some time to get things, settled in and really, whatever. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a 3rd round pick. Obviously all draft picks need time to adjust it into the NFL, get, situated, learn how to be a professional and all that. But the problem is that our offensive line is such a liability that we need help there immediately. And this is one of my overall concerns. Like, I don't normally mind guys, taking time and, whatever, adjusting to the NFL, but we need people there now. One of my overall concerns with the way that they ran the draft and so on and so forth is that, if it doesn't matter to me, it does, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, but it doesn't matter to me who's at quarterback or whatever if our run game doesn't do anything, and if we can't pass the ball ever because our quarterback is always being taken to the ground, well then, it doesn't matter. Right. So, if, and, some of these other guys, like I like Kilgore in at center, but the rest of the guys we have pretty much, I mean, Tunsil's obviously good. Chris Reed, we don't really know, much about, and what we do is certainly not, overwhelming with like confidence in that he's going to be able to do something. Isaac Asiata's gone. Sitton's obviously gone. Zach Stirrup and Jesse Davis, so I mean, there's definitely serious question marks still for me. And until they, honestly, I'm not gonna have any answers one way or the other on that offensive line until we actually start playing games and I see how they perform. Frankly, I don't care about any hype throughout the offseason, particularly with the offensive line, right? Like, you know, I can get on board with some of the hype, like, you know, elsewhere, like with the Preston Williams at wide receiver, right? You know, maybe there, which I'll actually get into that a little bit more in a bit, but not on the offensive line, man. They got to prove it, and to me, it's still a major liability, a huge hole, and, you know, so it's concerning. It is a bit concerning to me in that regard. You know, and so it's just an interesting case, and I just wanted to talk about it a little bit, but look, you know, because I don't know, like I said, I think that there's potential. Look, there's a lot of potential for this coaching staff and stuff to do, and this team to do good things, but there's also a lot of potential for the opposite to happen. And I think, from my perspective, there's a good potential that they're kind of setting themselves up for failure with the way that they handled, you know, some of this offseason and the draft in particular, in my mind. You know, focusing far too much on the quarterback and not handling it even in the right way, as you guys, you know, already know. I would have kept Ryan Tannehill, not gotten Fitzpatrick, not traded for Rosen, and picked up Will Greer in the third. But, you know, the offensive line, man, it's going to be huge, and I think they might be setting themselves up for failure. I would have, like I said, I would have taken Garrett Bradbury or one of the top 2 offensive guards, and not waited until the 3rd round, you know, to get a guy, you know, and then I would have gotten a defensive lineman in round 2, and then Will Greer in round 3, you know, but they did what they did, so, you know, they have an opportunity to show that it was the right thing to do. I just have a bit of a concern, and you know, this is the last thing I'll say on that particular thing, because I've said enough about it, but I have a concern that they might be setting themselves up for failure by not addressing the most important area of the offense, and that's the offensive line, not the quarterback. Quarterback is important, but it's not the most important. Anyway, I'll get more into all of that stuff later. So I just wanted to talk about that just a little bit, and that will tie in, like I said, to some other stuff. Also, I wanted to touch really quick on the Reshad Jones stuff, because there have been talks about him trading, or the Dolphins maybe trading him. That's been, you know, talk for a while. So look, here's the thing. Reshad Jones has done amazing things for us. He's always, well, I'll start here. So, like, one of the reasons why the reason why I did not like them letting Cameron Wake go was because, you know, we were the team, we essentially drafted him, right? You know, obviously he didn't make it in the NFL when he first came out, went to the CFL for a couple years, and then we took a flyer on him. But it was a good one, obviously. He holds some Dolphins records, I think. You know, he's, I think, 2nd in overall sacks. You know, he's been a team leader. He's been, you know, the poster child of this team. I thought Cameron Wake should have retired here, right? He's given us, you know, tons of good production, so on and so forth. You know, he never really had injury concerns or anything like that. No character concerns, nothing, right? He was a model guy, and I thought the Dolphins should have did everything in their power to make sure he stayed there so he could retire there. Reshad Jones is kind of the same thing, although I do understand there are some other concerns. You know, so I do understand that side of it, but I still would like to see Reshad Jones stay with this team. We did draft him, after all. He has given us tons of, you know, hard production and so on and so forth. Some of the problems are, though, is that, you know, he is getting older. He's in his 30s now. He's had shoulder surgery a couple times, including this offseason, which is, you know, I mean, that's rough, because he is a hard-hitting guy, but that's, you know, and that's the result of that is that his, you know, he's had these shoulder injuries now, so he does have some injury history and some injury concerns, plus he does have a pretty high contract price point on him. So, you know, unlike Cameron Wake, he does have some of those negatives. And keeping it real, if I'm keeping it real, he did you know, take himself out of that one game And I mean, you know, I backed him sort of then, like, I mean, just in the sense that, like, I do think that, like, I never want to try and put myself, you know, to speak for somebody else, right? So, like, I don't know what the reason is. Under most circumstances, I would say that's an unacceptable thing and you're quitting on your team, but I don't know exactly, and it seemed like he may have had an alright reason. I don't know, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he has been, you know, a leader on this team and has given us, you know, plenty of production, and he came back and the team seemed to accept him back and all that stuff. So, you know, it kind of is what it was, but keeping it real, that is there as well, right? Because that's a fact. You know, I'm not going to ignore it. So he does have some blemishes, I guess you could say, that makes that a little bit more difficult. And obviously, if you do trade him, you get rid of that cap hit, and you know, you can get some draft picks for next year, which would be great, I think. I'm not advocating for Jones to be traded. I wouldn't. I could if it happened, I could totally understand it, and I wouldn't hate it. I would dislike it, but I wouldn't hate it. Like, I hated Cameron Wake leaving, period. And I thought there was no reason for it. Anyway, so that's that. The last thing that I want to talk about is, because I read this article, and I'm going to read through a little bit and discuss as I do. It's pretty short, but I wanted to talk about it because this is going to be the kind of thing, you know, that we do for the next couple months while you know, there's no practices or any live Dolphin stuff. And that, so this article is 3 biggest X factors for the Miami Dolphins in 2019. I got it on Bleacher Report, but it comes from clutchpoints.com by a Skylar Carlin. Just to let you know, I disagree with almost everything he has to say in here. I'm letting you know that up front, but that's the fun of this, right? And you know, and again, part of what's going to happen over the next couple months is, you know, we'll just have to play around with these things. And, you know, I'm going to do, you know, I'll be reading tons of articles, so I'll try and find interesting, you know, conversations and talking, you know, and points to talk about and stuff like that. So, let's get into this. The Miami Dolphins are gearing up for a crucial season in 2019. Man, it's crucial. There is a new regime in place with the hiring of Brian Flores as head coach, and the Dolphins are hoping for results, positive ones. Yeah, that's true, right? We are definitely hoping for that. Flores comes from the New England Patriots, fact, where he spent 15 seasons with the organization. Most recently in 2018, Flores was handed the play calling duties to the departure of Matt Patricia, defensive coordinator, fact. Matt Patricia went and became the head coach of the Lions, as we know. After just one season calling plays for Bill Belichick's defense, Flores landed the job in Miami. Fans in Miami are hoping that Flores can instill the same winning culture that he was a part of in New England. That would be nice. After all, he did bring over a couple players from there. He did bring over, you know, some of the coaching staff. So, you know, he's bringing something. We'll just have to see if that translates into, you know, all the rest of it. This offseason, the Dolphins also went out and acquired Josh Rosen to be their hopeful franchise quarterback. Yep, well, they are hopeful. This comes after the Dolphins moved on from Ryan Tannehill and signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. Facts. In 2018, the Dolphins ended the year with a record of 7-9 under Adam Gase. It was the second straight season that Gase failed to have a record above 500. That is all true. Therefore, a move needed to be made to try righting the ship. All right, here's my first disagreement with this. I don't believe that's the case. I advocate for a regime to have 5 years, and when you phrase it like that and when you frame it like that, sure, you know, oh, Gase went 7-9 and failed to, you know, even match 500 for 2 straight years. Yeah, that sounds pretty terrible. But there's a lot of context that you're leaving out. A lot. And it's really important. Like, let's say, for example, in year 1, when he was a brand new first-year head coach, he went 10-6 and made it to the playoffs. Also, you're leaving out the fact that in year 2, he didn't have his starting quarterback because of an unfortunate injury. It wasn't Tannehill's fault. Wasn't anybody's fault. Calais Campbell's helmet happened to fucking, you know, have a collision course with Tannehill's knee and he tore his ACL. Should they have maybe had surgery sooner? Possibly, but I understand the way that they handled that. They thought maybe they could get him, you know, just healed up and he could come back and they could have him for the season. If not, he would, or even if they would have had surgery, he still would have been out like at least half of the season anyway, and they would have had to bring somebody in. Jay Cutler would not have been the pick for me, but you know, unfortunately, I think that was, you know, Adam Gase probably did have a slight bias there, right? You know, he knew him and so on, and they said that, and I understand that, but it just wasn't going to work, and it didn't work. But then you have everything else that could happen, that could happen, did happen, right? Hurricane, displacement, coach snorting coke, a linebacker going AWOL, right? All of these other things that caused this season to be terrible, right? Injuries, and then, you know, Raekwon McMillan going down, and, you know, blah, 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 right? All these things that led to a bad season. And then last year, just nothing but injury after injury after injury after injury. So that's why full context, full data, facts, it's super important, because when you just paint it and frame it in such a way that, you know, oh, you know, blah, 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 he could 2 straight years, Gase failed to have a record above 500. Okay, well, so do a bunch of other teams, but it's important to know the reasons why and everything surrounding that. Flores and company are hoping for a successful season in 2019, but will need a few important things to go right. Well, that is true. They are hoping for that, and they will need more than a few things to go right. They will need a lot of things to go right. Here are 3 X factors that will be crucial for the Dolphins to have a prosperous campaign in 2019. Number 3, breakout season from Kenyon Drake. Last season, Kenyon Drake was given a bigger role than he was accustomed to in his first 2 seasons with the team. In 2018, Drake was given 120 carries for 535 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also added 53 receptions for 477 yards and 5 scores. All facts. I do think, real quick, I do think Kenyon Drake is going to get more of a role. I mean, it's probably a necessity. But again, and you'll see this as a theme, it's not going to matter so much if he doesn't have an offensive line. And we saw this last year after we lost Kilgore and Sitton and other guys on the O-line, and we stopped being able to run so well. And then, but what'd you see, right? And a lot of people were super pissed off with the way Adam Gase used Kenyon Drake and stuff, but I loved it. Why? Especially after we started losing guys on the offensive line. Frank Gore proved that even with a shitty offensive line, he can still pick up positive yardage and so on and so forth, because he's just a bull up there, right? Kenyon Drake's not quite that, and using him more in the passing game, which they did, was phenomenal. And that's why you see he had 1,000 yards from scrimmage, but it was 535 on the ground and 477 in the air. 5 scores through the air, 4 on the ground. That was phenomenal. That was a wonderful use for him, especially under the circumstances, right? And so that's part of the reason why the criticism towards Adam Gase, I think, is absolutely foolish. So even if Kenyon Drake gets more, you know, touches or more carries, it's not going to matter if our offensive line can't open up holes or protect for him or block for him in any shape or form. So, yeah. And so they didn't mention, by the way, I'll just let you know now, this dude didn't mention offensive line at all, which is completely preposterous to me. How do you not mention the offensive line at all? Like, it's totally ridiculous. Anyway, it was a nice showing from Drake, but the Dolphins are going to need him to step into an even larger role in 2019. The Dolphins running back will figure to be the starter and will be given the majority of the touches. True, but again, I don't think it has really anything to do necessarily with how much he gets. I mean, if he gets about the same amount, and if they use him similarly, I think that would be wonderful. They need a fucking offensive line that'll do something for him. Regardless of who's under center this upcoming season, Miami needs to be able to run the ball effectively. Fact, but we can't without an offensive line, especially if Rosen is the quarterback, because it can help take some of the pressure off him. Either way, Ryan Fitzpatrick or Josh Rosen are going to have a super difficult time if they don't have a clean pocket and if they don't have a run game because of the offensive line. You saw it last year with Josh Rosen, right? He didn't do so hot, but that's in large part because he was like one of, if not the most sacked quarterbacks in the league last year. And Ryan Fitzpatrick has shown when you get to him and, you know, when you start getting pressure, I mean, he'll do some stupid and silly things. He might have some good games occasionally. That's why last year, dude, with the Fitzmagic thing, I never bought into that because he has a track record, 15 years or some shit of it, right? However long he's been, and he's got a track record, right? So, I mean, it's all, you know, the facts paint it for you, right? Kalen Ballage will slot in as the backup, but Drake will garner the most opportunities if he steps up once again. And real quick, Frank Gore's gone. He's in Buffalo now. We don't have a guy that can, at least that we know of right now, it's not Ballage or Drake from what, you know, I know of at this moment, from the information that I have from what we've seen out of Drake. Maybe Ballage a little bit more, but we don't, as of right now, have a guy that's going to be able to do what Frank Gore did. So that puts, you know, even more on the offensive line to perform. With this in mind, Drake will need to have a breakout season if Miami hopes to make some noise in 2019. Number 2, Devontae Parker needs to step up. Okay, the Miami Dolphins have had troubles getting the most out of Devontae Parker since he came into the NFL. Facts. The Dolphins drafted Parker 14th overall in the 2015 NFL Draft. Fact. In his 4th season, Parker has only started in 31 games with the Dolphins. He has averaged 40 receptions, 554 yards, and 2 touchdowns in his first 4 seasons. Facts. So, look, that's a large reason why all of what he just said in that is why I would have let Parker go this season, right? Or this offseason. And because of, you know, how much it's going to cost to keep him, I thought, to me, it just made more sense. Give him a fresh opportunity somewhere else. I love Parker. Look, I'm wearing his jersey right now. He was the guy that I wanted in that draft, and I hope he does step it up this year. But look, I mean, just at the end of the day, it's technically his 5th year option. Or no, they extended him. I'm sorry. They had done his 5th year option. So he made it through his entire, you know, rookie contract. And I told you guys, you can't evaluate a guy. And I'm not even saying that he's a full bust. I just think that it's better for us and him if he would have moved on and gone somewhere else, right? Like, I would have preferred to have kept Danny Amendola over Devontae Parker, especially because we do have Kenny Stills, Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant. I think Bryce Butler's still here, and if he is, he'll have a role. And then Preston Williams is like 6'4", or at least 6'2", I think, like 210 pounds, a big dude, and making hella noise so far, again, right? Like, it's just, you know, OTAs and stuff, but making hella noise. If he can step up and be what Devontae Parker wasn't, he's so much cheaper. He's a few years younger. He seems to have more of an aggressive attitude, and it'd be all the more reason why they should have let Devontae Parker go this offseason. And that's just more proof because he hasn't produced and he's been hurt quite a bit. Nonetheless, in 2019, he could be asked to play a pivotal role in the Dolphins' aerial attack. Of course he's going to be asked. There's no question about it. They kept him here and at a pretty high price. Miami decided to give Parker a 2-year extension worth $10 million this offseason. Well, it's not terrible, right? Like, his price is not terrible. It certainly could be far worse, and obviously he wasn't going to demand like number 1 receiver type money, considering, but still, Danny Amendola would have been, I believe he would have been cheaper, but he's certainly more proven, and so on and so forth. But even if you let him go, Preston Williams, you still got young, you know, like Preston Williams and other young wide receivers that could possibly, you know, come in and take that role, and you already have, you know, a handful of really good ones that are proven and so on and so forth, and that you know are going to play big roles. Stills, Wilson, Grant, Butler, right? That gives him the opportunity to prove himself with the new coaching staff. The Dolphins will head into 2019 with Kenny Stills and Parker as their top 2 wideouts. Yeah, that's true, but although Parker is the most approved amongst the whole receiving corps and will need to if the Dolphins want to win games, he does have a tremendous amount to prove. But I mean, again, we have guys, so I don't know, we'll see how it works. I mean, like I said, I do hope he steps up and I hope he does anything, but it's just really hard to justify keeping him around. And then, because look, what if, what if he doesn't, step up? Or even what if Preston Williams does outshine him? So I mean, all right. And then number 1, successful quarterback play. This seems like a no-brainer, but every team needs to be able to throw the ball with fruitful results if they want to be playing into January. Okay, well, it is a no-brainer because obviously you got to have some offense if you want to be. Defense wins championships, sure, but you can't win anything ever if you don't put up points. So clearly. But again, the offensive line is far more important, especially right now, as of right now. And I would have trusted Ryan Tannehill back there far more than I would have Ryan Fitzpatrick or at this point Josh Rosen, considering how we've seen him play behind a terrible offensive line, and he's not going to get at least as of right now how I can see it, any better here. So notably, the Dolphins passing attack in 2018 was dreadful, which is putting it lightly. So I'm gonna pause there. It got worse, progressively worse over the course of the season. But let's think about that. Why is that? Oh, wait. That's right. Josh Sitton goes down. Daniel Kilgore goes down. Other people are on our offensive line. Super depleted across there. We lost Tunsil at one point. We lost James at one point, right? We lost backups at one point. We lose Grant and Wilson, the 2 guys that were blowing the fucking top off of everybody, that were like scoring touchdowns left and right. We started off hot, super hot in the first 3 games of the season and could have kept going that way if we didn't have every single one of our major guys almost get injured, right? So we lost tight ends. We lost so many guys. It was just absolutely ridiculous, right? So it became dreadful, but it started out phenomenal. So again, there's some of that framing that just makes it seem like, we expected them to be dreadful. They came in, they were dreadful, and they were just dreadful throughout. Dreadful. No, we came in, we started out hot, killing it, and then we became dreadful because all of the people that were killing it got injured. And for the season, not for like a week or 2, but for the season. Hip injury for Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant with the foot. I don't remember what happened to Sitton and Kilgore, but they go out. I think one of them was like a pec or something. I don't know. Anyway, I don't remember. The Dolphins ranked 30th in passing offense in 2018 with Tannehill under center. Okay, again, now that framing makes it seem like it was Tannehill's fault. First, he missed games because of how battered he got after the offensive line got depleted. Our run game super suffered. Everything suffered because of all the injuries. It wasn't Tannehill's fault. Framing it like that makes it seem like the 30th passing offense was solely on Tannehill. That's absolutely insane. But that's how a lot of people think about Tannehill, and it's ridiculous to me. As a result, Miami decided to go in another direction at quarterback, adding Fitzpatrick and Rosen. Both guys will likely battle it out during the training camp, but Rosen figures to become the eventual starter. Well, I mean, but see, and that's why bringing in the 2 of them seemed completely, because one of them is going to end up being completely irrelevant. So you bring in Fitzpatrick for 2 years at potentially 10 million a season or whatever it is. For what then? If Rosen is supposed to be your guy, but what if Rosen doesn't work out? And then if you draft another quarterback next year, especially high, then you're completely wasting the 2 guys. And we are still paying Ryan Tannehill this year. It would have made so much more sense, and we would have had so much or a much higher chance, higher probability of having a successful season this year if they would have just kept Ryan Tannehill, at least just let his contract run out. I think he would have had 2 more years, this year and next year. Just let it run out if you're worried about his high number, right? Get an offensive lineman this year, so at least in round 1, so at least maybe, you have an opportunity to provide your offense with the ability to do stuff because the offensive line like blocks. Don't let Jawan James go. That was crazy too. Because look, if you would have had Tunsil and James as your bookends, and then you get like Garrett Bradbury, the #1 center and the #1 offensive lineman in the draft, now you have your bookends and your center. That gives your guards a little bit of leeway. And Jesse Davis did fine at right guard for the most part. It was a shaky year last year, but it was shaky for everyone. Most notably because of the injuries. And then left guard, Chris Reed probably would fill in fine. Or we have other options. Somebody could, you know, figure it out. But that's something you could work with. Now all we have is Tunsil. That's all we know. We don't have James. We don't have our bookends. We don't have Kilgore. I'm all right with him in there. But, you know, I mean, you get the offensive lineman and then you get Will Greer in the third. God damn it. Look. I'm sorry. Look, I hope that they prove me wrong in this, but I see major potential for failure, and it would have been because of their choices and how they decided to go about these things. Rosen only lasted 1 season with the Cardinals, but they didn't do him any favors. True. Now again, like I said, I don't think, first of all, I think, you know, getting rid of your first year head coach after just 1 year is completely insane. I don't know what the fuck the Cardinals are thinking. And then the guy you took 10th overall, to just trade him away so easily, maybe that says something about him. I mean, there were, you know, he didn't perform well last year, but that is not all on him. It was definitely in large part because he was one of the most sacked quarterbacks. But you know, they did say, you know, there has been a lot of talk about like he's got an attitude and stuff. So I don't know. He seems to be doing all right here. And also too, for as much talk about how smart he is, there have been reports that, yeah, well, while he's so smart, it's going to take him a little while to get the hang of all this. So that's not very encouraging either. Right now, all of this is just, you know, talk and speculation and so on and so forth. Or a lot of it is, right? You know, his stats from last year are facts, although not all his fault. But I mean, like, it's to me, when you put all of this stuff together, it doesn't paint a picture of success. And that's how I see it. That's my perspective. And I just don't feel like they made the right moves to give themselves an opportunity this year, or even going into the future. I thought that was a terrible way to handle it for building for the future either. He lost his offensive coordinator early in the season. His offensive line was woeful, and they ended up firing the head coach. Okay, all of those things are facts, right? Although they fired the coach after the season, so that's not entirely relevant, and then they traded him away, so it's not entirely relevant. Like, if he would have stayed in Arizona, then you could say, well, yeah, you know, during his time in Arizona, you know, they fired his coach after a first year. It is a fact that his offensive line was woeful, and he did lose his offensive coordinator early. But I want to point this out, I do find it funny, and he's not the only one. They do this, people do this, fans, media, they do this with all kinds of people. Like, they'll do it with Tom Brady, right? Or other quarterbacks, they'll say, you know, they'll say things like this, like, oh, you know, his offensive coordinator got lost early in the season, his line was woeful, and they'll use it to his defense. But with Ryan Tannehill, they never give him any of the benefit of the doubt, and there's no doubt, it's a fact. Ryan Tannehill was the most sacked quarterback in the first 4 years of his career. Fact, nobody can dispute it. It's inarguable, right? So, but people with him will shit on him all fucking day. And look, here's the thing. What I care about is, one, facts, and applying things equally to people, being fair, right? So a standard is not a standard if there are different rules for different people. That's completely contradictory to a standard. So if you have standards for a quarterback, then you should have that standard for everybody. So if it's hypocritical, and it's just completely fucking crazy. Despite that, Rosen gets a change of scenery and hopes to get a fresh start in the NFL. As for the Dolphins, hopefully Rosen or Fitzpatrick can provide a much needed spark for the Dolphins offense in 2019. If not, then Miami will be surveying the allotment of quarterbacks in 2020. Yeah, so look, man, I still have in case you hadn't noticed, I still have, you know, some pretty major concerns with how, you know, right from the, you know, the very beginning, with how the ownership decided to handle the last regime. I thought was completely unwarranted, uncalled for, and unnecessary. And, you know, with a lot of the things that this regime has done since they've taken over. So, you know, it is what it is. And again, they have an opportunity to prove themselves and prove me wrong. And I hope that they do. But it is going to be a massive hill to climb, massive mountain to climb. And I see, from my perspective, I see a ton of potential major issues. So we'll see how things shake out. Anyway, with that, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I hope you enjoy my videos, and I hope you do like having, you know, a different perspective, because I know that my perspective is not the perspective of most people. So I just hope you guys can you know, appreciate and enjoy a different perspective. And that's, you know, a major reason why I do this for you guys. I love doing it for you guys, so I hope you do enjoy it. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.